Hi, and welcome to the 2021 Free Application for Federal Student Aid, also known as the FAFSA. These slides are designed to be step-by-step instructions for students and families to be able to complete the FAFSA at home. These slides were designed by Champions for Learning. Champions for Learning for many years has provided curriculum and resources to help students and families prepare for life after high school. In light of the current health pandemic, we're adapting these resources to be more virtually accessible. Champions for Learning has a mission to create life-changing learning experiences for every student with a vision that is a community that is 100% engaged in support of student success. To learn more about Champions for Learning, visit championsforlearning.org. Champions for Learning is also a partner in Future Ready Collier, which is a network of more than 60 organizations, businesses, schools, and community members working to ensure that every child is ready for kindergarten and every young person enters adulthood with a vision and a plan to accomplish that vision. Future Ready Collier is the Collier partner supporting the 5-County Future Makers Coalition with a goal to transform Southwest Florida's workforce by increasing the number of college degrees, certificates, or other high-quality credentials from 27 to 60% by 2025. FAFSA completion is the #1 indicator of college going and provides access to a range of financial support to students. Champions for Learning partners with Collier County Public Schools and other partners to leverage resources to support students and their families to complete the FAFSA. We play a lead role in providing resources, training volunteers, and facilitating FAFSA completion events. These screenshots were prepared by Champions for Learning, provided by Federal Student Aid and Office of the U.S. Department of Education. They're based on fictional student-family situation and are intended to be used for training purposes. Therefore, the answers that you're putting into your actual FAFSA will vary from the ones you're going to see on your screen. So to begin, the first thing you want to make sure you do before starting your FAFSA is to make sure that the student has an FSA ID. That's your username and password that will allow you to digitally sign and submit your FAFSA. Now, if your parent has a Social Security number, they're also going to need to have an FSA ID to help you submit your FAFSA. If you don't yet have your FSA ID, please go to fsaid.ed.gov to create your username and password before proceeding into your FAFSA. If you'd like to view step-by-step instructions on how to create an FSA ID, you can go to collierschools.com/financial aid, and on the left-hand side, you'll see FSA ID instructions available in English, Creole, and Spanish. Now, once you have your FSA ID, come back to this screen and we'll walk step-by-step through the FAFSA. When you're ready to start, also make sure that you have not only the Social Security number for your student, but for the parent. And if your parent doesn't have a Social Security number, that's okay. Remember, the FAFSA is based solely on the student's citizenship, not on the parent's citizenship. So when it gets to that point, if your parent doesn't have a Social Security number, we'll walk you through how to answer that question. Also, you're going to want to have your 2018 taxes and W-2s for the parent, and if the student filed, you'll want those in front of you as well. A list of colleges and universities that you want to have your FAFSA sent to. You can list up to 10 colleges and universities on your FAFSA. And keep in mind, you don't have to have received an acceptance to this school to have your FAFSA sent there. So you could have this school on your list. Maybe you haven't finished the application or haven't received an answer back. It's okay to go ahead and list them on your FAFSA. Also, if your family has any other untaxed income, such as child support, and if you have your driver's license available, you'll be able to enter those into the FAFSA as well. Now, when we start, we want to go to fafsa.gov. So FAFSA, FAFSA.gov. It's very important that you go to the .gov. If you happen to Google FAFSA, the first selection you're going to see is a .com extension, which is not the actual connection to the government FAFSA website. So always make sure you're at fafsa.gov. If this is your first time filling out the FAFSA, you're going to click the first button that says Start Here because you're new to the FAFSA process. If for any reason during this process you have to save and come back and finish it at another time, Or if you need to make a correction after you've submitted your FAFSA, you can click the Returning User Login Now. So we're going to click Start here to begin. So for the first time you're logging on, you're going to log in as the student. The student's going to derive the answers in the FAFSA. So you're going to select and enter your FSA ID username and password and select Next. Now, when you're in the FAFSA, it's very important that you do not use your browser forward or backward buttons, that you're using those dark blue navigation buttons at the bottom. You'll see the next button with the arrow. You're going to want to use that to navigate through. If you use your browser's forward or backward button, it may time you out and not correctly save. The FAFSA automatically saves each page of information when you navigate using that Next button. So once you've entered your username and password, we're going to select Next. You're going to get a disclaimer that you're accessing a federal government website. If you'd like to read that, you can pause the video and read through all of the disclaimer, and then click Accept. Now it's going to ask you which year you're applying for financial aid. Right now, there are two FAFSAs that you could potentially be completing. If you are a high school senior and you are planning on starting school in fall of 2020, you're going to begin the 2021 FAFSA, so the option on the left. So every high school senior should be completing the FAFSA that's there listed on the left, the 2021 FAFSA. If you are thinking that you may start school in the summer, you could additionally fill out the 1920 FAFSA, the option on the right, but that would only be applicable for the summer of 2020, and you would use the previous year's taxes, the 2017, whereas for the 2021 FAFSA, we're going to use your 2018 taxes. So you'll want to select this FAFSA demonstration is going to walk through the 2021 FAFSA. Now you're going to create a save key. This is a temporary password so that if you need to save it and come back later, it will allow you to access right where you left off. So you can create a save key. It can be it needs to be at least 6 characters, combinations of letters and numbers. And once you've done that, you can select Next. I do recommend you write this down because remember at this point you have an FSA ID username, you have that password, and now you have a save key. So it's really important that you write these pieces of information down and keep them in a safe place to access. Now this is just going to walk you through the instructions on how to complete a FAFSA. If you'd like to read this, you can. We're going to hit Next to continue. Now because you logged on using your FSA ID username and password, the information on this page should be pre-filled. If you notice anything that's incorrect in this, you may need to go back and make a correction in your FSA ID username and password. Because this information is what is attached to that. So all you're doing on this page is verifying that the information transferred correctly and selecting Next. Now you'll notice on these pages as we navigate, it's going to have a little blue bar that tells you whose information you're entering. So here we're entering students' information, and that'll help us to navigate through the FAFSA as some of the pages look very similar. Again, this information on this page, your email address and your phone number, would have been transferred from your FSA ID. So again, you're just verifying that this information has transferred correctly. And again, this is the student's email and telephone number. This is the permanent mailing address for the student. Again, should be transferred over from the FSA ID username and password. You wouldn't want to use a school address because depending upon if you're in a dorm or an apartment, that address could be changing. You want to use a permanent mailing address such as your parents. Okay, next it's going to ask you if the student has lived in Florida for at least 5 years. And then it's going to ask your citizenship status. Now, if you're unsure how to answer any of these questions, you'll notice each question FAFSA has a little blue question mark to the right-hand side of that question. You can click that and it'll give you a definition of each one of the answers to help you navigate and select the correct option. Once you've answered those 2 questions, you'll select Next. Now, it's very important that we read through these questions carefully, as a majority of mistakes on the FAFSA are made on this page. So what will your high school completion status be when you begin the 2021 school year? So this is speaking about when you begin college in fall, you would have a high school diploma in most cases. So you want to make sure that you're answering correctly. What college degree or certificate will you be working on when you begin the 2021 school year? So if you're a high school senior and you are going to college for the first time, you want to make sure that you're selecting that you're either working on an associate's degree, a technical degree, or up to a first bachelor's degree. You want to make sure, even though your aspiration may to become to be a doctor, right now when you're just beginning, you're only working on an associate's or a bachelor's degree or a technical degree or certificate when you're starting out. This is important because some federal and state aid is only available up to earning your first bachelor's degree or your first 4-year degree. The next question, will you have your first bachelor's degree before the 2021 school year? For most high school seniors, this answer is going to be no. Even if you've done dual enrollment, you may have been able to obtain an associate's degree, but probably not a 4-year bachelor's degree, so that answer is going to be no. The next one, what will your college grade level be when you begin the 2021 school year? This is very important. Even if you have done dual enrollment, that dual enrollment was done through your high school. So the answer to this question for a current high school senior should be never attended college first year. Okay, so even if you've taken dual enrollment classes, even if you're going to graduate high school at the same time as your associate's degree through dual enrollment, you've never officially matriculated into a college. So you're going to be a never attended college first year incoming freshman. Okay, the next question, are you interested in being considered for work study? I always highly recommend students select yes for this. Work study is a federal program that provides supplemental aid to students by working on campus. It's a great program that allows them to not only work, but if whatever their contracted hours, they may be given some additional hours in that contract amount to do their studies while they're on campus. So it does not guarantee you a job by any means. The student would still have to apply at their college for a position, but it can factor that into your financial aid package to help provide enough financial aid to cover your expense of college. So I recommend that you click yes onto that. Again, if you want more information about work study program, you can click that question mark and I'll give you some further details and instructions. And then we'll select next. Now on this page, you're going to answer, are you male or female? In this case, for this situation, we selected male, so you can see a few extra questions. If you've selected female, you will not see the following questions. So the next question, if you selected male, is, are you registered with Selective Service System? The federal government to be eligible for federal aid requires that all males register for selective service. Most males under the age of 18 have not yet registered. If you're unsure if you've registered, you may have done it when you registered to vote or pre-registered to vote. If you're unsure, you can select no, and then it will ask, do you want us to register you with selective service? You can select yes. You can't be registered for selective service twice, so even if you're unsure, your safest bet is to select no, that you have not registered and that you would like FAFSA to register you. This is to ensure that you maintain your eligibility for state and federal aid. Once you've selected those, then select next. If you have your driver's license, again, this is the student, if you have your driver's license, you would enter that information and select next. Now it's going to ask you some questions that are going to vary student by student. Are you a foster youth or any time in the foster care system? And then it's going to ask you what was the highest school completed by your parents. If you are unsure, there is an option to select other or unknown, but you can pause the video and ask your parents to make sure you have the correct information. This is very important because schools will also ask this on their application to try to determine if you are going to be considered a first-generation college student. Okay, now we're getting ready to enter your school information. So you're going to enter the name of your high school and what city your high school is located and what state, and then select the search button. Once you do that, it's going to ask you to confirm that that is the high school you attend. There'll probably be a radio button, and hit next. Now it's going to ask you what colleges you want to have your FAFSA sent to. So you're going to have to search for each of those schools through the FAFSA system unless you happen to know the code for that school. The easiest way, though, is to search. So you could put in this case, we're going to search for schools in Fort Myers, Florida, and hit the search button. And then using those radio buttons, we can select Florida Gulf Coast, Florida Southwestern State College. Keep in mind, even those schools like Florida Southwestern State College have campuses in Charlotte and Collier counties. Their main campus is located in Lee County, and they only have one federal school code that they operate. So they go under their main site location of Fort Myers. That would apply for all schools. So once you've selected those schools, it's then going to ask you, what is your preference for housing? It's going to ask you if you're going to live on campus, off campus, or with your parents. If you're unsure at this time, if you're listing a school that's not in your area, I highly recommend that you select on campus. That way, the cost of the dormitory and meal plans are factored into your cost of financial aid and your financial aid award letter. It doesn't guarantee you housing. It doesn't mean that they're going to give you financial aid to cover the housing. It just factors in that cost, and you can later work with the school to determine if living on campus is the right option for you. But if you don't select that here, the school doesn't know to factor that in. Now, also on this page, remember this is where you can add up to 10 schools. So if you need to keep searching, you could click that Add More Schools and have all of your schools listed in the order that you want them. Oops, let me go back one screen. So when you have them on the screen also, it's very important that you select a Florida public school as your first choice. You can move them up and down using those plus and minuses on the left-hand side, but it's very important that a Florida public school is your first choice. That ensures that the State Office of Financial Aid is marking you as a student and indicating your eligibility for state aid. That's what prompts them for that. So keep in mind, schools like the University of Tampa, the University of Miami, even though they have university listed in their title, they are not public universities. So you want to make sure that, again, the school you're listing first is a public Florida university or state college. Also keep in mind that when you're listing these colleges, they cannot see the order in which you have listed them. So if you're concerned that you're debating between FSU and UF, and you don't want one to see that you've listed one above the other, the schools cannot see this. They only see the results from your FAFSA, so they will not be able to see how you order any of the schools. Once you've got all of your schools listed and you've selected how where you're going to live on campus, off campus, or with your parents, and you've made sure that you have that Florida Public University as the first option, we're going to go ahead and select Next. Now, again, this is the student's information. It's going to ask you, as of today, what is your marital status? As you can see, as we're moving through these tabs on the top, it's now going to be looking at what is your dependency status. So it's going to ask you, as the student, do you have any children who you're supporting or they're receiving at least half of the support from you between July 1st of 2020 and June 30th of 2021? And then also, do you have any other dependents, so other children or a spouse who you live with that you're supporting? Okay, then you're going to read through these questions, and if any of these apply to you as a student, you would mark them, and not, you're going to select none of the above. Okay, and then finally, it's going to ask, on or after July 1st, were you homeless or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? If you're unsure of how to answer this question, again, use that question mark. If you think you need to answer yes to this question, please reach out to your school counselor to ensure that you have the proper paperwork, because the colleges are to request that the school has identified you and issued you that certificate. So if you think that this applies to you, please work with your high school counselor to ensure you have proper documentation. And we know that certainly, again, homeless does not necessarily mean that you do not have a roof over your head. It means that you do not have a permanent roof over your head. So if you are living on a friend's couch right now, you may fall into that category. And again, we highly recommend that you reach out to your school counselor for assistance in obtaining proper documentation of that. Once you've answered this question, go ahead and select next. And now, based on those questions, it's saying that you, as a student, are going to be considered dependent and need to provide parental information on the FAFSA. So keep in mind, it did not ask you about your age because your age was already entered from the very beginning based on your Fsa Id username and password. In most cases, students are going to be considered dependent, meaning that they need to use their parents' information on the FAFSA until they are 24 years of age, in the military or considered a military veteran, have a child that they support at least 50% of the time, or they are married. So keep that in mind. If none of those life factors happen while you're in college, most likely you're going to need your parents' assistance in completing the FAFSA all the way through your bachelor's degree until you turn at least 24 years of age. So here, we're going to have to select that you're going to provide information about your parents, and select next. Now you'll notice that that bar at the top has changed from student information to parents information. So this is the portion where you want your parent, and you can continue answering these questions, but you'll just want your parent there to make sure you're entering this information correctly. So it's going to ask, what is the parent's marital status of today? So in this case, we're in our hypothetical situation, we're saying that our parents are divorced or separated. And this is the year that they became divorced or separated. And because we live with our parents at least 51%, our mother at least 51% of the time, we're going to be using the mother's information on the FAFSA. So in this case, if your biological parents are divorced or separated, you're going to use the biological parents' information on the FAFSA that you spend at least 51% of the time with. Now, if that biological parent is remarried, you're also going to use the step parent's information, and we'll see that in just a minute. Okay, so we're entering the mother's information here, including the email address. Now, we also want to make sure that that email address is the same email address that we used when mom created her Fsa Id username and password. And we're going to select next. Now it's asking, has your mother lived in Florida for at least 5 years? So because you're considered dependent, when you're applying to the colleges for proof of Florida residency to give you in-state tuition, they're also going to ask that you provide your parents' information to be able to get that in-state tuition and prove residency. Now we're going to calculate the household size. So as you can see, it automatically calculated the mother's counts as a 1, and it automatically counted you as the student as 1. So it's trying to automatically calculate that there are at least 2 people living in your household. Now it's asking if there's other people that live in that household that live with your mother, that your mother provides at least half of their support, and that she's going to continue support. So we answered 2, that there's maybe 2 other siblings that live in that household. Therefore, it adds that number and makes the total number in the mother's family to 4. Now in that next section, you'll see of that 4, how many are going to be in college between July 2020 and June 30th, 2021. So you would not include your mother, but if you or those other 2 siblings happen to be going to college, they would be included in that number. So in this case, we've answered just 1. It's just going to be you as the student entering college. That number may change for you, though, depending upon if you have siblings that are in college. And then you'll select next. So now it's going to ask, how did the parents or your parent complete their taxes? So in this case, mom had already completed her taxes. We're selecting the form that mom used to complete her taxes. So if you have those taxes in front of you, if you look up in the top left corner, it's going to tell you that you filed a 1040, perhaps a 1040A, a 1040EZ. And then right under that household information where you see the name and address, it's going to tell you what type of tax filing status your mother had, or your parent had. It could be head of household, it could be married filing jointly. You'll want to select that from the drop down. Now, based upon how you answered those questions, you'll see this link to the IRS button. If this button is blue, we highly recommend that you select that button. And what's going to happen is you'll see a pop-up that allows you to enter the information from your taxes. So just the name, the address, and then it will try to do a match to pull the information off of your taxes back into the FAFSA. This is called the Irs Data Retrieval tool. So instead of having to enter the information by hand, it's going to pull that information in automatically for you into the FAFSA. So it saves you some time and prevents errors on your FAFSA. If this option is available, we highly recommend using this. It's just important that when you are entering that information, that you enter it exactly as it's printed on the taxes. So if they spell out the word lane in the address, you would want to spell out the word lane in the address. Same thing, look where your apartment number is. Sometimes they put it at the end of the address, and sometimes they put it in the box where the apartment number exists. So enter that line for line exactly how it appears on the printed taxes. Now, then it's going to ask to be able to before you get to that link, you'll have to enter your parent's username and password. So in this case, we're entering mom's username and password, her FSA ID username and password, to be able to link to the IRS. And you'll select next. Now in this case, because this is a simulation, we cannot link to the IRS. If you were successful in doing that, these numbers would be grayed out at this point, and it would transfer that information. So back like how I was saying that the information that you enter on the taxes would line up line for line with the address information. If that's successful, it'll say that a match is found, and then it will import those taxes back into this screen, and it'll be grayed out so that you can't make any changes. It's very important that once that information is transferred back into this, that you don't attempt to make any changes, as it will not show that you've used the Irs Data Retrieval tool if you happen to click in those boxes or make changes. In this case, we're going to have to proceed like the parent was unable to use the data retrieval tool, which is okay, and we can just look at the taxes and determine which information we should be entering into which line. So in this case, it's asking for the adjusted gross income for 2018, and given that the parent filed a 1040, we're looking at line 7. So if you look there at the question, every time you have to answer a question, it's going to tell you which line of your taxes you should be looking at based upon what type of taxes you filed. So that answer, if your parent filed a 1040A, you're not looking at line 7. It's going to have a different answer on your screen for you. And then you're going to select next. Now it's going to ask about the mother's or your parents' income from wages, salaries, and tips. And it's going to tell you exactly which lines to look at based upon, again, which taxes were filed. And if you're unsure, you again select that question mark box, and it'll give you a better definition of how to walk through that, and then select next. Now it's going to ask a few more questions. In this case, it's asking if the mother filed a Schedule 1. Now, based upon the information that we entered on the taxes this far, it's saying in this case for this student, they do not need additional information from the parent's income and assets. So it's saying, do you want to skip the remaining questions? If it asks you this question, certainly we recommend go ahead and hit yes. It's trying to automatically calculate your FAFSA results, and it's saying it doesn't need additional information. Now, this may not appear at the same place for every student, and it may not appear at all. You just are going to have to walk through and answer the questions as you go through them and continue to follow line by line. Now you'll notice it's skipped back over and gone to the student information. So we've entered all of the parents' financial information, and now it's asking, we're going to do the same thing for the student. So did the student file taxes? In this case, the student did not file taxes, so we're selecting not going to file. If you as a student did file taxes in 2018, you're going to walk through this just like how we just did with the parents to submit your tax information. In this case, though, the student did not file, and we're going to select no. Next. Now, even though the student did not file taxes, they may have worked. So in this case, the student earned, we're going to say $300 from working a job. That's a federal filing requirement, so they did not have to file taxes. If you're unsure of the federal filing requirement, you can go to the irs.gov and determine what that level was required, if you were required to file taxes, and then you'll select next. Now again, this is the student's information, so you're going to read through each one of these and determine if any of these apply as a student and if you received any of these, and then select next. Again, you're going to read through these questions to determine if the student received any of these. And again, just like on the parents' taxes, it's asking if we want to skip the remaining questions about the student's assets. Again, it's recommended if it's asking you this, you can go ahead and select yes and hit next. If you're unsure, again, this is a great place to hit that question mark button if you're unsure, and it'll give you a better definition of why you may or may not want to skip the questions, and select next. Now it's asking if you are a preparer. This is very rare. So this would be someone other than a student or a parent preparing or completing the FAFSA. So in cases, if you're a student or parent completing your own FAFSA, you're going to select no. You are not a preparer, and hit next. Now you're going to see you're almost done, but not quite yet. So you're going to see kind of a long page that breaks down all of the information for each individual answer on your FAFSA. You can do a quick glance through this just to make sure nothing jumps out at you as maybe you've done a typo. If so, you can hit the previous screen at the bottom, again, that dark blue button, not on your browser. You don't need to print this screen. A full printout is going to be emailed to you after you submit your FAFSA. This is just a good one quick glance to make sure everything looks like it's there. If you see any blanks, that's okay. That just means that question did not apply to you, so it did not ask you the question. And once you get all the way to the bottom, we're going to hit next. Now you'll see here it's asking that both the student and the parent need to sign the FAFSA. So this is again where that Fsa Id username and password comes into play, because having that Fsa Id username and password, we can digitally sign the FAFSA. So we're going to select provide student signature, and because we've already logged in as a student, it's going to automatically mark off the button that once we've selected provide signature, and it's going to mark that it's signed. And then the same thing would happen for the parent. So where you see that little circle with pencil in it, it's going to turn into a green check mark once we select provide student signature and then provide parent signature. Now, if you're in a situation where the parent was unable to create an Fsa Id username and password, or your parent does not have a social security number, when you were filling out the FAFSA, you would have entered all zeros in that parent social security number. So here, the parent would not have an option to digitally sign the FAFSA. What it would say instead of provide parent signature is to print a signature page. So you would actually print out a piece of paper that has a barcode at the top. Your parent would physically sign that piece of paper, and it would give you an address to mail it to the Department of Education or to FAFSA so that they can then attach that physical signature to your digital FAFSA and process it. It's very important that you read carefully so that you understand your FAFSA will not be processed until they receive that signature page from your parent. Once both the signatures have been digitally applied, or you've done the student signature digitally and printed out the signature page for the parent, you'll be able to advance to the next screen. Now it's important that you understand that you can read through all of this and then hit agree as a student. It's basically asking you that and making sure that you understand that all of the information that you have put in here is true to the best of your knowledge. You'll want to read through these quickly and so that you understand what you're agreeing to by submitting your FAFSA. And once you've done that, select agree and then the next button. And again, as I mentioned, you'll see that green check mark appear that now that signature has been applied, and we're going to do the name for the parent, and it's applied for the parent. Now, once you see those two green check marks, you're going to be able to hit right there in that bottom right-hand corner, submit my FAFSA now. And once you've hit submit, you're going to see congratulations, your FAFSA has been received. So very quickly, let me show you a couple pieces of information on this screen. It's very important. So first, you'll see a confirmation number. Then right underneath that, you're going to see a data release number, a DRN. You want to make sure you write down this number. That's an important number. The school that you've applied to may reach out to you and say, can you give us your DRN number? That's the only people that you would be releasing a DRN number to or giving it that number to, unless you had to call FAFSA themselves for some type of technical issue. So protect that number, but hang on to it. It's important that you keep that. And then you don't need to print this page, even though it gives you that option, because again, these results are already probably sitting in your email. It emails you pretty instantly that you're the same page. And you'll see right below that expected family contribution in EFC. So in this case, because we were just using a simulator, our EFC is all nines. The lower your number, so depending upon how low that number is, for federal aid, it could go as low as 0. If you had a 0 EFC, then you would be, it would look at that number, the schools would look at that number saying that your family is expected to be able to contribute $0 towards your education. Now, keep in mind, even if your EFC is not 0, that's not necessarily the school saying, okay, your EFC is $5,000, you're expected to pay $5,000 toward your child's education. They just use that as a ratio to determine what aid you're eligible for at a federal level, a state level, and then potentially the school's level as well. And as you've probably seen, if you've started applying for scholarships, a lot of scholarships also ask for this EFC number or your student aid report. So once your FAFSA has finished processing, about 3 to 5 days after you've submitted it, you're going to receive another email called your student your SAR, your student aid report. That student aid report, it's very important that you hang on to that. Make sure you save it in a folder on your email, because the school may ask for your student aid report, as well as scholarships or other opportunities you're applying for. That student aid report is basically looked at as your results from your FAFSA. Also on that top of that student aid report may be some important information if you need to follow up or make a correction, or it may give you a good indication that the schools may ask you for some additional information. So as we just talked about, there's a few things after that may happen. That student aid report's going to come. Also read it very carefully, because the Department of Education randomly selects, they say 1 out of 3 students that have completed a FAFSA to complete something called verification. So you may be required to follow up with your school's financial aid department just to provide some additional information. If you use that data retrieval tool, it may be as simple as signing a page and indicating that yes, you filled out the FAFSA, but depending upon what that school is requiring, it may be a couple pieces of information. It's very important to keep in mind, though, that a school cannot provide you your financial aid award letter until you have cleared that verification process. So it's important that once you've submitted your FAFSA, you continue to monitor your school's portal, especially that financial aid page, to watch to see if they need anything else before providing you that award letter. So for more information around financial aid and resources, make sure you visit callyourschools.com/financial aid. And again, Champions for Learning, we're working on putting together additional resources like this FAFSA training that we walked through today. For more information and for additional resources, feel free to visit championsforlearning.org/resources. And if you have specific questions about financial aid, college access, or a personal question while walking through the FAFSA that you're just not sure how to answer, feel free to reach out to me. My direct line is 687-1370, or you can email me at jmanchet@championsforlearning.org. And again, Champions for Learning website is championsforlearning.org. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Future Ready Colliers network partners, we've compiled a resource kit to help students be prepared for their higher education goals. And you can view and download that college readiness toolkit at futurereadycollier.org/resources. So thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help you. And thank you for watching and completing your FAFSA.